Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 1995 comedy Friday. Now, before I go any further sharing my thoughts on this film, I want to give a special shout out to Sylvia for requesting this review. And if there's another film, TV show, or topic that you would like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to my PayPal. The link will be in the video description down below, and I will try to get to it as soon as I possibly can. Now, Friday is one of those films that I've seen a handful of times. I will admit that I haven't seen it nearly as many times as other people have. I guess it's because the stoner comedy was never really my go-to comedy. But I still really enjoy this film. I still think this film is a classic comedy, and definitely one of my favorite comedies of the 90s. It's a movie that, in a lot of ways, is a slice of life film about life in the hood. Um, but it's just written in a way where it just feels so raw and real, and also in a way where it's not afraid to poke fun at things and and just create a really fun and just welcoming vibe, despite what a lot of people at the time would have envisioned the hood as, based on other bits of media from the time period. Which, that's the whole point of this film, is that F. Gary Gray, Ice Cube, and DJ Pooh, they wanted to create a movie that was the antithesis of what the usual Hollywood hood film was, like Colors or Boys in the Hood or Menace to Society, that showed the darker side of the hood and really focused more on that than on the other side of it, where you had a lot of people who grew up in the hood who had good times and got high, and yeah, things weren't always the best. You didn't always have milk for your cereal, but you made it work, and you still managed to find a bright side to things. And it wasn't all people getting gunned down, people being high on drugs. It wasn't all of that. Like there was a different side to it. And because of this film and its surprise success, then you would have other movies that would try to show this side as well, which I definitely do feel is a positive, because there's two sides to every coin, and that definitely applies to life in the hood. It's not all bad, and it's nice to see a film like this that shows that side of it, and I think that is something that really connected with a lot of people at the time, and honestly still does. It's directed by F. Gary Gray, and this was his first film. Like, he had directed some music videos before this, some of the music videos for NWA or for Ice Cube, and that's a big reason why he was picked to direct this film. But I think that was actually a really good choice, not just solely due to the familiarity with Ice Cube, in terms of just making things a little bit more comfortable for him in a film role that is the complete opposite of what his rap persona was known as, and also a good choice because he was every bit as passionate about the idea and the concept of this film as everyone else involved with it. And he lent a lot to this film as well, because the film was shot where he grew up. Like, that was his neighborhood. The neighborhood that is featured in the film, that was his neighborhood. So that really does create a certain authenticity to it, a certain sense of realism, despite some of the silly scenes in the film and some of the hijinks, if you will. There's still this underlying sense of realism. Like, this isn't just your typical Hollywood version of the hood. Like this is the hood for real. And I think F. Gary Gray, in his music videos, he showed a lot of potential in terms of his eye and his ability to just create some really nice, slick, stylish looking shots. And that carries over here in his direction for Friday. It's a very stylish looking film. Like it, even though it's a film that was made for a really low budget, it doesn't necessarily look like a movie that's extremely cheap. Like it still has this nice look to it. It still looks slick, especially when it comes to the flashback scenes or different sort of sequences that have a lot of movement on camera. And he also had this really good connection with the cast to get some really genuine and just great performances, even out of supporting characters and little bit roles. And just maintained the right vibe and the right feel on set as well as on the screen. Everything's just very consistent, very solid, and not really with a lot of missteps when it comes to his shot selection or the techniques that he's employing with the camera. And yeah, I think for a feature film debut, it's honestly quite impressive. And I think if you look at his filmography, he's an underrated filmmaker. He's done other films like The Negotiator that were well shot and well directed. Um, and all in all, like I don't really feel that F. Gary Gray was really the problem when it comes to a lot of these lesser films that he directed. Like A Man Apart, I don't think is a badly directed film. It's just the script is just pretty generic. Um, the Italian Job, I think he did a great job directing that. Be Cool's another thing where the writing wasn't really the best. Law Abiding Citizen, I thought he did a nice job with that. Straight Outta Compton did a great job directing that. Even in something like The Fate of the Furious, Men in Black International, the movie sucks, but it's not really F. Gary Gray's fault. So yeah, I think when you look at his filmography, he's a pretty consistent director. I mean, after this, he did Set It Off. So, yeah, I think he's pretty underrated when it comes to a filmmaker because he just seems to be very consistent and doesn't really have a lot of moments where he's just not really on his game. The screenplay is by Ice Cube and DJ Pooh, and the script, in a lot of ways, is just a template for these actors to just have fun, and it's a sandbox of sorts because so much of the film's iconic dialogue and the funny scenes and all of that, it was all improvised by various different cast members in the film. So I mean, the majority of Smokey's lines were all improvised by Chris Tucker, and that was the same for a lot of other actors in the movie. So that being said, though, the film does have a script that still has a strong enough template and a good enough foundation to be able to hold up all of that other stuff. And it doesn't just collapse because it's not just held up entirely by improv and jokes. One of the things about this script that I really love is that it makes everything feel very grounded and very real with not only with the interactions with different characters and the variety of different characters in the neighborhood, but also its messages and its themes. The scene with Craig's father, where he's talking to Craig and he's essentially telling him that you don't need a gun to feel safe in this neighborhood or defend yourself. You just need your fists. And it was a really good message about not just going straight for a gun to defend yourself or defend your neighborhood. And that's a message that I think still rings true today. So there's a lot of that in this script. It's not just Debo and you got knocked the fuck out and damn and all of this other stuff. Like there's more to the script than just the stoner comedy or just a comedy in general. And the conflict, it's very simple and straightforward, but it's effective. Smokey smoked too much of the weed, so he's got to find a way to make $200 before a certain time period for Big Worm. Otherwise, he and Craig are gonna be dead. So I mean, doesn't get more tense than that. It's like this is literally life or death at this point, and you have other subplots, other things that are going on as well with Craig and his girlfriend and him eventually realizing that she's really not the right one for him. And he decides to go with the neighborhood girl, Debbie. And you have that whole sort of romance angle going on. You have the stuff with Debo, who in a lot of ways he represents Craig coming face to face with independence. Like defeating Debo and standing up for himself is like one of the last remaining things he needs to do to mature and to grow up and to be an adult and to be independent. And I think Debo's definitely a really good example of that particular mountain for Craig to climb, because the script does a good job providing him with a lot of moments where he's very intimidating and definitely does feel like he's a very daunting challenge for Craig to overcome. And there's other stuff as well, of course, with the Smokey and him, trying to get the money for Big Worm and him ultimately coming to the realization that this shit's for real and like this isn't all fun and games and that we got to take this seriously and we got to find a way to get this money, otherwise we're gonna be dead. Can't hide from it. That's the other thing, like you can't just hide from something like this. You have to face it head on. And so the script handles that pretty well with Craig and Smokey, where they have to face this head on. They can't just you know wait it out. And there's other little things going on too. Like there's this neighborhood kid who's just being obnoxious and knocking over everybody's trash cans. Uh, and they're trying to catch him throughout the movie, and then eventually they do catch him and beat his ass. Which that's something that I would say nowadays some people might find to be offensive, but I thought it was hilarious, and it's one of those things where you know what, like if you're gonna keep doing that shit, like that kid's lucky. That's all we got. That's all I gotta say. Um, and there's just all these different little things that happen, like where you get a little glimpse of the lives of other people in the neighborhood. Like you got the crackhead guy who's just always around, and he's quick to take something or try to come up with some scheme or some way for him to get more crack. Um, you have like the preacher who preaches the Bible but is really not practicing what he preaches because he also wants some weed, and of course he says it's for his cataracts. Um, you have the neighborhood gal who is just showcasing herself to the entire neighborhood. You have a lot of these other minor characters, but they still really uh make an impact. Like Mr. Parker. You know, Mrs. Parker's the one that's giving everybody a show, and Mr. Parker is upset and he's tired of her doing all of this. And then throughout the film, like eventually he gets fed up and is like throwing her stuff out of the house because he's just tired of what's going on with Mrs. Parker. And there's just a lot of stuff like that throughout the movie. Like there's the whole thing with Chris Tucker's character Smokey and these Hispanic guys. Yeah, Hector, his smoking buddy, and this whole thing where Hector gave him some angel dust and it just completely fucked him up, and now he's pissed off at Hector because Hector bullshitted him and lied to him and said it was just regular weed, but it was angel dust. And there's little things like, yeah, he smoked the angel dust, and now Smokey is still fucked up from the angel dust at this point in time, where he has like this weird twitch. So there's little moments like that throughout the script that I think really do elevate it into more than just your regular average lazy tired stoner comedy. Like you have the stoner jokes and you have some of that other stuff, but there's just a lot of other things that just make it so much more than that. And just some really just hilarious exchanges and funny lines of dialogue, and all in all, just a really good script. And I know a lot of the dialogue is improvised, but there was a good chunk of it that wasn't. And that stuff really works. And so does just the basic plot. It's simple. Even the idea that Craig got fired on his day off, like that's hilarious. So the film also features just a phenomenal cast. I mean, this is one of the best casts that you could think of out of any comedy. Ice Cube is Craig, who's playing against type, who's playing a slacker, who's playing, a guy who's reluctant to get high initially, but then gets high, loosens up, and goes along for this crazy ride with Smokey and trying to get the money for Big Worm, and also in the process standing up to Debo and standing up for what he believes in without using a gun. And I felt, yeah, there were a few moments where Ice Cube's line delivery was a little flat, but at this point he wasn't really, let's just say, a really established actor. Like he had been in some bit roles here and there, but like it's not like he was like a major thespian or anything. So there were some points where the acting was a little bit flat, but I felt for the most part it was a good performance. Especially when it comes to scenes with him and Chris Tucker, because Ice Cube and Chris Tucker just had amazing chemistry. Like the two of them were just really good together, and you really bought that they were longtime friends. And Chris Tucker and Ice Cube, I don't even know if they were really close in any capacity until they started working on this film. In fact, there were other actors who were considered to play the role of Smokey. There's no one else who was considered for Craig, if I remember correctly, because this was a passion project of Ice Cube's that he worked with alongside DJ Pooh, because DJ Pooh was originally going to be Smokey, but DJ Pooh was considered to be an actor who was not really that well known enough. So the studio was like, we need, we understand what you're trying to do, but we want somebody, we want a name that we can pair with Ice Cube. And I think it was Ice Cube who liked Chris Tucker, but Chris Tucker, his first audition wasn't really the best. So the producers are kind of willing to go in a different direction, but then he met up with this this woman who helps people nail auditions, and he got another call, and then he nailed it, got the role, and the rest is history. And I definitely do feel this is one of Chris Tucker's most iconic roles, if not his most iconic. Like, I know a lot of people remember him from The Fifth Element or from his role in the Rush Hour films, but for me, like, the most iconic and most memorable role for Chris Tucker is Smokey. Like, that's one of the first things that I think of when it comes to Chris Tucker. Um, and he was just great in this. And the fact that he improvised a good chunk of his dialogue just shows how good he was in this movie. Just absolutely just fucking hilarious. Just such a hilarious, funny performance. Um, the rest of the cast is great too. Nia Long is Debbie. I thought, even though the romance angle was pretty thin and been there, done that, she had a good personality, good charm to her. I felt that she had some decent enough chemistry with Ice Cube, especially the romantic chemistry. Uh, Bernie Mac was fun, and his little bit role was Pastor Clever, the pastor of the neighborhood. Of course, the late great Tiny Zeus Lister Jr. is Debo. Uh, just an unbelievably intimidating presence, but also a performance that at times was legitimately pretty funny because he just played it so straight. And in a lot of ways, this character Debo is just this ridiculous caricature of this neighborhood thug. But the way that Tiny played this character, it just made it into something that was just instantly iconic and just really something that to this day is still well remembered, and a lot of people just quote this character. You have like two different NFL players and James Harrison who had a nickname Debo. You got the San Francisco 49ers wide receiver Debo Samuel. Like, a lot of people were just really drawn to this character. You can see why. Like, and if you think about it, Debo isn't in the film a lot, but he really does make the most out of um, the little bit of screen time that he has. Tiny Lister Jr. He's definitely come a long way from No Holds Barred at this point as an actor. John Witherspoon, who also is no longer with us as Willie, Craig's dad. Just a terrific performance. Just as funny as Chris Tucker and Ice Cube or any of the other bit part character actors, but also has moments where he's down to earth and he's speaking to Craig and he's being an inspiration to him. And yeah, he's having the scene where he's in the bathroom and, he's dropping bombs, but then he's also dropping truth bombs in a way that's just as effective as any of the other moments where he's trying to be comedic. Regina King, uh, she's good too as Dana, Craig's sister. She's not in it a lot, but she's still fun when she is on screen. Anna Maria Horsford, who plays Betty, Craig's mom. It's another one of those instances of a character that's not in the film a lot, but she makes the most out of what she has. Like the scene where she makes this big, elaborate breakfast, and Craig's like, "Hey, mom, can I get some of that?" She's like, "No, you ain't getting any of this. This is for me." Like, you go have some cereal. Like that is hilarious. She was just as funny as everyone else, just for that one scene. It was one of the funniest scenes of the movie. Uh, Paula J. Parker is the abusive girlfriend who's just constantly calling and just being a total bitch. The actress did a great job playing that character. Like, you definitely didn't like her and you wanted Craig to dump her ass quick. Faison Love is Big Worm. You know, he's the drug supplier that Smokey works for. Um, or Smokey also likes to call him Big Perm, which apparently that was a mistake. That was a blooper. That was not intentional, and they kept it in because it was a funny scene. It was a funny line. Um, it's not intimidating at all, but I think that's really the point. Like, he's supposed to be this guy who he's really more of a big softy than anything else, but because it's his reputation and because it's his job, like, he'll shoot you. Like, he's not as intimidating as Tiny Lister Jr., but he'll still shoot your ass. DJ Pooh, he's also in it as Red, the neighbor who gets his bike stolen by Debo, who in a lot of ways is kind of Debo's bitch for most of the movie until he winds up standing up for himself a little bit, but only after Debo got his ass knocked out by Craig. But at least he gets some courage to actually be near Debo and actually say anything, whether it's to his unconscious body or not. And Anthony Johnson as the petty thief, the crackhead. Um, he's also really funny. Apparently, that was a role that was originally intended to be played by Tommy Davidson, but for whatever reason, Tommy wasn't able to do it. There was some scheduling conflict or whatever, so it went to Anthony Johnson, and I think he did a good job. And you've also got like Tony Cox as Mr. Parker, Kathleen Bradley as Miss Parker. Um, Even the director F. Gary Gray, he has a cameo as a worker at the store. But yeah, definitely the majority of screen time is really devoted to Ice Cube, Chris Tucker, Tiny Lister Jr., John Witherspoon, Nia Long. And the film features some, honestly, pretty lively cinematography by Jerry Lively. I really think that's a good way to sum it up. Like, the cinematography does a good job showing the hood in a way that really does feel like it's not overly glamorized. It's more grounded, more real, but it's not boring. Like, there's still energy behind the camera, and that's definitely evident when it comes to the editing by John Carter. I think a good reason why this film has this fun vibe to it is because of the editing by John Carter, because there's a lot of scenes where you have like edits where the camera will kind of flip around, or there's almost kind of a comic book style editing at times, and honestly I feel it works with the film when it comes to the tone and what they're trying to do with it. It features some music by Frank Fitzpatrick and Hidden Faces, but it's not really what I would consider a typical film score. I mean, most of the music is just some really good hip hop and rap songs. A lot of people consider it to be like one of the best soundtracks. And honestly, I get it. Like, I'm not really a super big fan of hip hop, but I like a lot of the tracks that were featured in this film. Like, the songs that they use in this definitely did really add to the overall vibe and feel and flow of the film. Now, it's also a movie that just goes by at a really good pace. Like, it's 91 minutes. It never really feels like it's too long. And I'm talking about the theatrical version. I'm not talking about the director's cut, which the director's cut sucks. I much prefer the theatrical version. I do not understand why the theatrical version is only on DVD. I don't get it. It's dumb, stupid. And I know I'm not the only one. Because there's a lot of people who are big fans of this film, if not even bigger fans of this movie than I am. And even they're like, whose idea was this to only release the director's cut on Blu-ray? Like, because whoever came up with that idea needs to get knocked the fuck out. But anyway, yeah, I don't really know what else to say about Friday, except thanks for watching my review of the film, and until next time, I'll see you later. See ya.